Hello to everybody in the stand-up community. This is a special show, and tonight I will host a special hangout at 9 p.m. East. That is 9 p.m. East. If you're a paid subscriber, I want you to join us and invite a friend tonight. Tonight is an invite a friend hangout. You'll know who they are. You can share the link with them. Specifically, I'm thinking of your kids, your Gen Z kids, your voting age friends. Invite a friend to tonight's hangout, 9 p.m., and I hope to see them there. I really would love to hear the opinion of some young folks at tonight's hangout, if possible, 9 p.m. But right now, I've got a very special list of guests joining me. They are on the show in the order that I spoke to them today, and that started at 9 a.m. with David Rothkopf. I put this together on the fly. I like to think that's the value of the show and my credibility. I don't have producers. I don't have bookers. I have a cell phone and contact numbers. I reach out to people. I ask them if they can join me. They usually say yes, and I got all four of the people I wanted to talk to today, and a few others I will be talking to later this week, like Celeste Headley, but David Rothkopf, Dr. Jason Johnson, Dr. Christina Greer, and Dr. Allison Gill. That's right, 3 PhDs and the great David Rothkopf of Deep State Radio, which is where I begin. He was on an epic tear. I was really glad that he was able to join me, so let's get it started. It's the Kamala Harris for President Palooza Extravaganza Special. That's the whole bit. I just keep butchering whatever this is because I produce on the fly. I hope you like it. And if you do, please sign up for a paid subscription because I worked all night and day on this before I get in the car with Ava to head back 4 hours from Syracuse to Rockland County, where I will be seeing you tonight at 9 p.m., hopefully at our celebratory positive energy, which I've tried to give you hangout tonight. But let's start with David Rothkopf right now. Well, there he is, my top go-to, because he has been an advocate and some would say carrying water for Vice President Kamala Harris, even before she was the vice president. David Rothkopf, is that right?
Well, I certainly haven't been carrying water for the vice president. I think I noticed very early on that I think that she's a woman of extraordinary capabilities, very impressive in the Senate. And so I supported her as early as 2019. But once she became vice president, I covered her a lot, wrote about her, saw her, met with her, and just, I have to say it, with every passing month and with each passing year of her vice presidential tenure, I became more impressed.
Your latest over at your amazing new Substack, I'm so happy you're doing it. Everybody should subscribe. Need to Know is titled, Kamala Harris will be the first woman president of the United States. She is the right candidate for a pivotal, can't say the word, but you know it is, in history. And David, the problem is she can't win.
That's ridiculous.
I hear a lot of people say it.
Well, that doesn't mean it's true. A lot of people think that, there are real angels and devils and that people lived at the same time as dinosaurs.
Yeah, Samuel Alito.
Yeah. But the reality is, first of all, she was on a winning ticket. She did win as vice president of the United States. There are some people who say, well, she can't win because she was a woman. Well, Hillary Clinton got more votes than Donald Trump as a woman, and then Kamala Harris was elected. There's some people that say she can't win. She is a person of color. But Barack Obama won in 2 elections as a person of color. In fact, in 3 out of the past 4 elections, there has been a person of color on the winning ticket. And in the past 2 elections, a woman has been on the ticket that garnered the most votes. So I don't buy this stuff.
I'll ask some legal types, but she will never be on the ticket, on the ballot in November. The Republicans will do everything they can to prevent her from being on the ballot, at least in the states that matter the most. Are you worried?
No, not at all worried. It's not a real issue. The Democratic Convention is not until August, even though there were some states that were trying to play games with that. That was quickly dispatched. If you go talk to people, go talk to Mark Elias or some of these other experts. They will tell you these are fake issues. They won't hold up, and that Kamala Harris and whomever her running mate will be on every ticket in every state.
By the way, it seems that almost every single name that's been thrown out there that would even be remotely close to thinking about running or running has endorsed her. So I'm not sure that there's going to be a challenge at this point. And it happened all very quickly, it would seem. Is that fair to say?
There will not be a challenge. I think, there were several remarkable stories yesterday. One is Joe Biden's courage, selflessness, and grace. Another one is that, we have a woman nominated who is likely to become the next president of the United States. But I think another one for people who are watching American politics is the stunning speed with which the party coalesced around her. No one predicted it. No one knew what would happen. She's raised over $70 million in her first 14 hours. Every state chairman has backed her. The majority of Democrats in the House, the majority of Democrats in the Senate, every single credible candidate who was going to run against her, as you say, has said they now support her. We've never seen this kind of embrace within the party, particularly the Democratic Party, by acclamation, like we've seen in the past 24 hours.
What do you say to those that are saying this is not democracy? We don't anoint people, we vote on them.
Well, okay, fine. She was on the ticket. She was one of the people who got 15 million votes. It was her and Joe Biden. She was elected by the American people in 2020. So she won then. She won in the primaries, and one by one, delegates to this convention have got to change their votes. So one by one, those delegates are going to choose her. And as of right now, less than 24 hours after she became the candidate, she has a third of the delegates that she needs to win. I predict later today or tomorrow or Wednesday, she'll have all of the delegates she needs to win by a democratic process where they have chosen her.
I feel like people love to say the Democrats are in disarray. It seems the opposite based on what's happened in the last 24 hours and what you and others are predicting will continue to happen in the next 24.
The Democrats are united. The Democrats are united around a great candidate. The Democrats are united because of the leadership of an excellent president. The Democrats are united because the threat from Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the MAGA party is so extraordinary, and they're ready to step up.
I don't know about me. I'm mad about the way Joe was treated. I don't know that I'm gonna be mad.
Good, be mad. You gonna vote for Donald Trump?
No, I'll still vote for Kamala, but I'm very angry with the way Joe was treated.
Well, that's too bad. Move on. The reality is he made the choice. And you know why he made the choice? Because he looked at the data. And you can talk about him being treated. 2/3 of all Democrats felt that he shouldn't run. He looked at the data and concluded himself that he shouldn't run. He made the right decision. It took a while, but ultimately he exited in the right way. And everybody should be proud of what he did and excited about the candidacy of Kamala Harris.
How does she win? What is the strategy? What is the message? I'm hearing a lot of people say the prosecutor against the criminal. I like that. Obviously, he's going to focus on women's reproductive rights, which has got to be one of the top issues, at least to get people out to vote. Certainly that a lot of people care about. What's the strategy? How do you beat Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump has never won the popular vote in an election. Okay, so let's he's not some crazy juggernaut out there. Secondly, Kamala Harris's biography gives you a pretty good roadmap. She is the prosecutor against the felon. She's also a woman running against the most anti-woman ticket in history. She is the foremost advocate of women's reproductive rights in the Democratic Party, running against the biggest threat to women's reproductive rights out there. She is a woman of color running against racists. She is the daughter of immigrants running against people who want to put immigrants into concentration camps and deport tens of millions of them. She is somebody who has patriotically served her country since becoming, the district attorney of San Francisco, being Attorney General of California, as a senator and as a vice president, running against people who are supporters of our enemies, of Putin, Orban, and company. And she's a Democrat running against fascists. So, I think it's pretty clear.
She's weak on foreign policy, David.
She is exceptionally strong on foreign policy. She was, as a senator, on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where she distinguished herself. She's met with over 100 world leaders. She has played a central role in U.S. policy in Ukraine, been to the Munich Security Conference twice, represented the United States at the Ukraine Rebuilding Conference in Switzerland recently, has been in the lead on Gaza policy, helped be the real architect of what comes after the war, gave a pivotal speech on that in Dubai in November, met with all the leaders in the region to help move that forward, actually made real headway with the president of Mexico on immigration issues, put together a $4 billion fund to invest in Central American countries to keep people from flowing into this country by creating jobs in those countries, has played an important role traveling throughout Asia in creating a counterbalance to China, has been in the lead in U.S. response to next generation threats like AI and space-based threats.
I didn't hear you mention anything that was really impressive vis-a-vis the relationship with Iceland.
I can't speak to her relationship with Iceland, but I would say this. Iceland is a country that had only two that I can think of parliaments in the world that was majority female, and we could learn from them.
Well answered. Finally, none of those questions were really mine or my concerns, but there certainly are a lot of what you're hearing, and I loved all of your answers. But my final thing is I'm excited. I got very excited yesterday. My daughter is very excited for the first time because she did not like Joe Biden. He certainly didn't excite her and many of her friends. So it seems, say a last word about the excitement, the energy out there. And obviously it turned into money. It's turned into a lot of things. But what do you say about this? With 100 days left, all of a sudden, there's all this excitement, David.
Well, we have the young candidate. We have the first Gen X candidate ever. Yeah, we have a candidate who represents the Democratic Party every time she walks in a room as a woman of color, as a woman of Asian descent, as a woman of Caribbean descent, as a woman of great accomplishment, as the woman who ran the second largest Justice Department in the United States, who we remember when she questioned Bill Barr, she questioned would-be Justice Kavanaugh at the time, and she grilled them, and she was strong, and she is a great debater. And this is exactly what we need to counteract the oldest presidential candidate in U.S. history, a man who is in his decline, who is nuts to begin with, who has porridge for brains, who picked a man with no principles as his running mate to back a platform through this Project 2025 that is going to strip away Americans' rights and gut our democracy. It couldn't be starker. And every single issue that you might check off as you analyze it cuts in the favor of the Democrats.
You are the best. I'm so glad I got you on today. I don't know that I need to talk to anybody else now. Go listen to Deep State Radio, everybody. So good. David Rothkopf. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Of course, now that David is gone, I was lying. I obviously need to talk to other people, especially women and people of color, and that's what I've got coming up in the rest of the show. Now joining me from Morgan State University, MSNBC, and Slate's A Word podcast, Dr. Jason Johnson. Oh, yeah. One of the most in-demand people, one of my favorite people, one of the smartest people I know is Chrissy Greer. Joining me now, Jason Johnson, though. I'll be talking to her later. Thank you very much for joining me, buddy. I appreciate you. I wanted to reach right out to you. I just want to get your top line reactions. Why don't you start with you're upset as to the way that this all went down and how Joe Biden is treated, I think, by Democrats?
Well, I think that this is the best you can make of the situation. You know, Joe Biden had just gotten to a point where it was untenable for him to lead the party anymore. I think Democrats made a mistake by, sandbagging their own person for 21 straight days. But if you're going to do that, you have to be willing to make a bold change. And the way that they appear to be rallying around Harris right now is what they need to do. I think it's important for everybody to understand that there were these memes out there that everybody was like, oh, my gosh, this is all being led by white guy consultants in the Acela corridor and media people. And yes, there was some of that pushing for Joe Biden to step down. But some of it was just based on real numbers. And you got to recognize that there were members of Congress who were like, dude, you're dragging me down. Yeah, dude, you're hurting the attorney general candidate that was running pretty decent statewide. So once that happens, Joe Biden's got to step down. It appears like everybody is more or less rallying around Harris right now. And then it remains to be seen what happens. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different moving parts right now.
Was there a racial divide over this issue of Joe Biden stepping down and Kamala Harris stepping in, and then it all being put on her? Did you feel that? Did you see that? Because I certainly anecdotally felt like a lot of black folks, listeners, smart commentators, and others were pissed about what was happening to Joe Biden. But maybe that was just my read of it, and I didn't see polling or data. What am I missing?
So yes and no. There was obviously everything has a racial, gender, class component in America. No doubt. But the real divide was the fact that, and I said this last time we were on together, George Clooney, Ashley Judd, Aaron Sorkin, all the Hollywood elites who were sort of speaking, as surrogates for donors who were speaking because of what had been whispered to them by people behind and upset in Congress. It was this whole idea of Joe Biden stepped down, Joe Biden stepped down. But there was a conspicuous absence of any commentary about Harris. And if you're asking Biden to step down and you're not saying what's going to happen with his VP, everybody sort of smelled that for what it was, right? So what people were angry about and frustrated about is what you're not going to do is find a way to maneuver the vice president out of her job. She is second on the ticket. If the head of the ticket steps down, then it would be her job. That is who people voted for. So that's where the racial component came in, because it seemed like there were a number of people who were trying to erase her from the equation. But the fact that you see a lot of folks rallying around her now, the fact that you see a lot of people who were in whisper campaigns to get rid of Joe Biden have now said, okay, yes, but I will endorse Harris, like Gavin Newsom and some of these other people, that has assuaged some of those concerns.
So I think it's fair to say you seem to be more hedging than I am. I think it's fair to say she will be the nominee. There is nobody who will challenge her. She's got the money. She's got the brand. She's got a whole bunch of the same campaign people, the same campaign structure. And what you just said, anybody who would have challenged her has already endorsed her. They're probably running for VP, if anything. And now she's got a whole bunch of delegates. I just talked to David Rothkopf, who said in the probably next 48 hours, she'll have enough delegates to be the nominee, and then they'll just make it official at the DNC. Do you disagree with that?
No, that's where it is. I mean, it's been a fast moving story, because when I did my video that's on Twitter and on Instagram, it was after Biden had dropped out, had endorsed Harris, but we hadn't seen this sort of just flood of people, the 44,000 black women on a Zoom call, all the endorsements, state delegates and everything else like that. Now it seems pretty clear she's going to be the nominee. In fact, in real time, it's been very funny. We're here on Monday to see Joe Manchin, do his before. Joe Manchin starts off with like, well, you know what? I may become a Democrat again and challenge her. But about 2.5 hours of TV hits later, he's like, I'm not saying I'm going to run. I'm just saying somebody should run.
Oh, is that right? That's too bad, because that's disruptive for me, because I had his supporter booked.
Yeah. He had a plan. Everybody has plans, but little plans have a way of not quite working out.
Yes.
So she's going to end up being the nominee. Now, I'm going to answer the questions that everybody's particularly excited and interested about, and I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to be very candid and be very honest.
All right, well, you just talk, but you ask yourself the question, so I'm going to lean back.
Yes, I'm going to just to step back here. I was skeptical. I was skeptical of Harris's chances until literally Saturday. And it was the day before, because I was
her chances, I'm sorry, just to clear up, to be the nominee or to win?
Her chances of becoming the president of the United States. I was like, I didn't know if I believed that it was possible for her to actually beat Donald Trump. And so I was very skeptical, and I had a long conversation with a very, very trusted pollster that I know on Saturday, and he sort of laid out a path, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That actually makes sense. So there is a mathematical way, there is a strategic way that Vice President Harris can beat Donald Trump and can become the president of the United States. Will it happen? I don't know. Nobody knows. Again, it's July. But if you just look at it from the standpoint of Nikki Haley, right? Nikki Haley, who when she was running for the Republican nomination in January was like, our parties are running two septuagenarians. Whichever party dumps their old guy first basically is going to end up winning. Yeah. Well, she's probably right. You have 60, 70% of independent voters saying they didn't like either of their choices. you have a lot of Americans saying in both parties they didn't like either of their choices. Bare minimum, from a branding standpoint, the Democrats look like that restaurant that says, "We hear you. We are now going to offer unlimited shrimp," right? Like they've heard that you were unhappy with the menu, and now they're offering something different. So.
Okay, let's talk about how that looks. And you mentioned the pollster. I mean, what are we talking about constituencies here? Because I talked to my old white Italian dad here. He'll turn 80 in a couple weeks, and he's in for Kamala Harris. I don't know that he's super excited, but he definitely hates Donald Trump. He's terrified of Donald Trump, and he's not unexcited about it. He thinks it's a good thing if she can win. He's worried that she might not be, but he's in for it. My daughter, she's 19. She's really excited for the first time because she and her friends were like, Joe Biden's old and Gaza. So I'm talking young people. I'm talking old people. I'm just throwing shit out based on my own family. And just for myself, I'm very excited as well. I always like Kamala Harris. So what constituencies, based on my anecdotal looking around my own room with the only people I know close to me in the last few hours, at my parents' house, what do I need to know about these different constituencies?
Based on my poll of the people with me in this Uber. I
wish I had like this diverse group, but that was diverse enough. Old white guy, young white woman, me, whatever I am.
So Biden's coalition, his success came from high but not historic Black turnout, a very good gender gap, not historic, but a very, very good gender gap, and doing really well in the suburbs and doing really well. I mean, I keep pointing this out. Biden was winning white senior citizens. Joe Biden was winning those groups over Trump. The reason he was not doing well now is because he wasn't holding that coalition together. So what's the coalition that Harris would need?
Yeah,
she's probably going to lose some white seniors, right? They may not be as excited about voting for a woman. They may have some concerns there. Again, may not hold them at the same numbers. Doesn't mean she's going to lose them. She's not going to hold them at the same numbers as Biden. So where does she make up for that? Well, she makes up for it by, if she gets Obama level, and she will probably do better, Obama level numbers with African-American voters, in particular African-American women. Remember, Barack Obama got 65% of eligible Black women voted for him in 2008. That was higher than any other ethnic group in the country. Harris could easily get 68. She could get 70. Right. So if she gets like 70% of eligible Black women turning out to vote for her, and as you pointed out, and your daughter is exactly emblematic, you have a lot of young people who are like, I hate Joe Biden. I don't want to vote for Joe Biden. And they think, hey, the Democrats listen to me. They dump their guy. Right. It's like the person in your apartment building who's like, I've been tweeting about that squeaky front door for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they don't do anything about it. I bet you they saw my tweets because they finally fixed the door. Look, they were going to change the door anyway. But if you think it was because they saw your tweets, go for it.
That's a great analogy. All right. Finally, what are her vulnerabilities in your mind?
Her vulnerabilities are she's a vice president. A lot of people don't know what the vice president does. Even some of Biden's own people dropped negative stories about her over the last year and a half. She is a woman. She is a Black woman or an Indian woman. So people who may have issues with that one way or another. The fact that she doesn't look like a president may be a concern for some people. But I think we might be in a glass cliff situation in this country. And the most important thing, I'll close with this. The Republicans who I have spoken to, the honest ones, are legitimately flummoxed. They don't know what to do now because their entire campaign was about beating down Joe Biden. So when your opponent doesn't know what to do, that's a hell of a lot better than how confident they were that they were going to steamroll Joe Biden.
Dr. Jason Johnson joining me on short notice for my special. I am so grateful that you were able to punch in, and I thank you very much for talking to me as always. Good stuff.
All right. Later, man.
Yeah, there he goes. Jason Johnson. Go thank him for joining me. Please, please, please. That means a lot. And now from Fordham University, she was my guest on yesterday's show. And then, of course, after we taped our conversation, the news broke that Biden was going to step down and support Kamala Harris. So I reached back out to Chrissy Greer in London. She just got done having lunch with Val Demings. She's such a big deal. And she was able to give me 10 of her precious minutes and wisdom. And and I loved all of it. Here it is right now. Chrissy Greer, go listen to her on her podcast, support her, all of her work, all of that in today's show notes. As always, say hi to her on Twitter and thank her for joining me. Let's get across the pond with Chrissy Greer. What a privilege and an honor. 2 days in a row, I get to talk to you, the brilliant Dr. Christina Greer, because of course we've got to add an addendum to our conversation from yesterday. Things happened.
A lot of things happened. I mean, geez Louise, it's been quite the month in a day, right? I feel like there's a lot that's going on. So Joe Biden has told the country that he is going to finish his term and not run for re-election. He has not just said that, but he's also endorsed his vice president. And so is Hillary Clinton. The mayor of New York City vacillated, but he's gotten in line. He said he's a good soldier. And thus far, as of this taping, the big non-endorsement has been Barack Obama.
What do you make of that?
So my grandmother said, the only time you should be surprised is when you're surprised. And I'm not yet surprised.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
well,
listen, he didn't have a hat on at his inauguration. I'm just going to leave it there. Some of your listeners will know exactly what I mean by that.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So that gives me a clue. That gives us a little clue that not everyone, it's not a 100% in line. And so what perfect situation, Joe Biden's a bridge president that he said he would be, and he says he's not going to run in 2021. That didn't happen. After the 2022 midterms, he barely gets, unified government thanks to New York. He doesn't have it, but he could have said, I'm not going to run. And then you open it up. It could be Kamala, it could be whomever, everybody jump in. He didn't do that. So now the silver lining is he says he's not going to run, and it's before the convention, which is great news. There are still some conversations about finances and PACs and donor money and primary voting. And the Republicans are going to try and challenge it and say that she's an illegitimate candidate. VP selection, she's not yet the nominee. So it will go to the convention, and hopefully it won't be a wild convention. But I think had Barack Obama come out just as quickly as Hillary Clinton and so many other folks who have said we unequivocally support the vice president, we endorse her, then I think it would be very clear that the entire Democratic Party is behind Kamala Harris. For those people who are calling for Joe Biden to step aside, it would have been great if they said, step aside, Joe Biden, because we have already shored up all the support for Kamala Harris, and there will be no drama in Chicago. Everything will go seamlessly, and this Black woman will get the nomination that many people believe she deserves because she's been a faithful vice president. Now, I think you and I both know white men enough where I'm not too sure if all these white men in the Democratic Party are going to let her walk into the nomination. Nancy Pelosi is probably on the phone right now, making sure folks don't get froggy to do so.
So yesterday when we talked, you had this very passionate point, which I think a lot of folks agree with, about the exhaustion of Black folks, especially Black women, constantly coming to save America, the Democratic Party, and that, to some extent didn't want to do it again. But it looks like last night there were like 40,000 Black women on a Zoom call, and it seemed
44,000, raising over $1.5 million in about an hour.
And overall, they raised more money than any campaign has in a day. And so I feel like there's a tremendous amount of, all I'll say is that it feels like there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. And it feels like it's coming from a lot of Black women, a lot of Black folks. So am I missing something?
No, that's absolutely the case. I mean, listen, we get information because we know what's at stake. The issue is we get information. Everyone else is running around like, what should we be doing? Get information too. You don't see birds just flying all willy-nilly, right? If you see people getting information, how about you try it? So, I mean, that's the frustration. We still do it. I do think, though, that, I did NPR last night. There were quite a few people, non-Black people, who called in who were like, I'm actually galvanized. Like, I wasn't excited about Biden. I was going to, vote or whatever. And folks are, at least this is NPR, so it's obviously a skewed sample. But, folks are saying, I'm going to give money. I'm actually going to, do some due diligence. And so that's what needs to happen. Black people are not a critical mass in this country, in the electorate. We are a base, sure, and we disproportionately turn out based on numbers. Absolutely. But it has to be white people who get it together, right? So it can't just be us. So as I keep saying, so if you're excited, then, talk to that neighbor who's like, I don't know if I'm going to vote. Talk to that, family member who's like, well, I just don't think that a woman of color could do it. And, as people twist themselves in knots not to vote for a woman, especially not to vote for a woman of color. Like, that's the hard work that needs to be done in rooms that I'm not in family dinner time that I'm not privy to, when you're having those conversations about race and gender and the confluence and the intersection of both, that's the heavy lifting that needs to be done. So like Black women, like we're doing all this other stuff. You all have to do your part too.
You know, I have an acronym I use when you're not in the room, WWCD, and I say, what would Chrissy do? And so that's what you're asking us to be, is exactly what you're saying. I get it. And what do you think about the vulnerabilities of Kamala Harris, or the already, you know, these classic right-wing attacks rather, that are already playing out? I feel like they're going to go too far, Chrissy. I feel like bring on the sexism and bring on the racism, bring on the DEI stuff. It's ugly. I don't like it, but it's only hurting them. It's not going to help them. What do you think?
Well, we know what they're going to say. She's the DEI candidate. She's a woke candidate. She doesn't deserve it, right? I mean,
she slept her way to everything she got as one.
Of course. Is she really American, right? Because she's the child of two immigrants. I mean, you know, we're going to go through all the tropes, and then you're going to try and chip away at, you know, percentage of Black men. Same, you know, when she was an AG and during the beginning of her presidential campaign, there's going to be misinformation and disinformation. She was the top cop. She imprisoned half of the Black population of California, and the other half was the Latino population. All these tropes, stereotypes, myths, and lies, like Democrats should be prepared for them, right? We know sprinkling a little bit of anti-Semitism because her husband, Doug, is Jewish. I mean, we should be prepared for the bottom of the barrel. We've seen the way Republicans are talking about J.D. Vance's wife, and he's on their team, right? So, I mean, she must have Macedonian extracted blood because of her features, but like they didn't know she was brown. And how dare he name his kids Vivek and, you know, traditional Indian names? Is he a real white man? You know, like he's just acquiescing to the Indian side of his family. I mean, this is what we are up against. And so it's not a surprise. So let's actually counter the disinformation about her time as AG. Let's actually play up the successes of this administration. Let's play up as to how she's framing abortion and reproductive justice as an economic issue, not just a moral issue for Americans all across the country. Because guess what? It is an economic issue. If you force a woman to have a child, that's an economic issue. Yeah. And Republicans like to say that, you know, life begins at inception. So guess what? Run me my money then. Where's my paternity check? If I'm pregnant, then guess what? I can start collecting child support from you right now. Like, let's play it to the hilt, right? Let that be a conversation, because right now it's a conversation amongst a lot of women. Let's pull some men into this conversation too, because if you're forcing me to have a baby, then guess what? We're in this boat together. We're going to have this baby. I think that's going to change a lot of conversations when we start putting that economically. The Republican Party isn't the party of pro-life. They believe in the death penalty. They let children get shot in schools. They let them starve at the border. Like so stop using their language. Right. And hopefully the Democrats can get themselves organized sooner rather than later. And hopefully the convention will be a time for us to celebrate the unity and the diversity within the party and then move forward towards November.
Lastly, what do you make of, what am I supposed to say? How do I react to those that make the criticisms of Kamala Harris from the left, progressives that you mentioned a couple of? She's a former prosecutor, so she's a cop. So she did a lot of things to, you know, hurt Black and brown communities as a result of that role, or, you know, criticisms about the way that this has gone down, or anything else that are legitimate criticisms. You know, how do you handle them? Do we just dismiss them and say, we don't have time to discuss these things? Let's get after it.
Right. So, I mean, I just think it's always fascinating how you could always rattle off sort of the ills of female candidates in ways that you just can't with men. That's just an aside. So ask people why they're so invested in her past. But every single president, there's not a single president that does not have sort of a blemished record. I mean, I love LBJ. Guess who I can't say that around? Vietnam vets. Right? You know, you can say you love Barack Obama, but like Guantanamo Bay wasn't closed and he upheld a lot of the Iraqi and Afghani wars. I mean, like, you know, we can go through. Donald Trump is a 34 count convicted felon who likes to sexually assault women. Multiple. Okay. Convicted. So I don't know. I think that, you know, when you look at the record, an attorney general is a prosecutor. Guess who's prosecutors? Lots of Black people, lots of Latinos, lots of women. Right. So did she change the structure for office while she was there? Yeah. So how about we go past the headlines and the Republican talking points? If you really want to look in her record, sift through the record, which is not as egregious as the Republicans have painted it to be because she was doing her job as a prosecutor. And let's actually focus on present day when she was a vice president or when she was a senator. Like, let's bring it up to the 21st century. And let's think about what she said she's going to do as president versus what Donald Trump has promised he will do.
Most importantly. Christine.
I mean, this man confuses mental asylums with political asylum. He can't tell the difference.
I think he's too old. I think Donald Trump's too old to be president.
Well, that's the conversation now. He is now our oldest candidate in the history of the nation.
We are so lucky, I speak on behalf of everybody listening, to have you 2 days in a row. Your wisdom, your passion, your sensibilities, your humor, and your directness. Did I miss anything?
They're going to start talking, Pete. We got to go.
To thoughtfulness. Thank you so much.
Always, always, always.
Oh, yeah, there she goes. Always, always. Christina Greer is so good. Great stuff. Please let her know on Twitter. You appreciate her joining us. Our special here. Now, time to get to my last guest, Dr. Allison Gill of Mueller, She Wrote on Twitter, of Jack on podcast and her daily podcast, Daily Beans, Mueller, She Wrote, MSW Media. She's very influential on social media and in all political world. I think in alternative media, really, because she doesn't do a lot of the mainstream stuff that others do, and that allows her to stay consistent with a lot of the message that she's always searching for and sharing with her listeners and followers. Love talking to Allison Gill anytime. Today was no exception. We had a great conversation. I hope you'll let her know that you heard her here. Let's do it. My final guest on the Kamala Harris Palooza Extravaganza special. There she is. One of the most influential, intelligent people I know. Dr. Allison Gill joins me to give her reaction to, I guess, the last 24 hours and the way forward. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh my gosh, Pete, thanks for having me. How are you? It's good to see you, my friend.
I'm excited. I think I felt differently about this whole thing than you, but I followed everything that you said and so many other people. I think nobody was wrong. That was my feeling. But now I feel like I thought I would, excited. But how are you feeling? Are you trepidatious? Are you excited? What are your thoughts?
No, I'm really excited. Yesterday was a very up and down day. In the morning, I was very sad. I was heartbroken. I was angry about what the media had done to Joe Biden. And then as the day progressed, actually just within hours, the coalescing around Kamala Harris in such spectacular fashion. I mean, normally we see that many endorsements kind of drip out over like a year. And we got them all in like a couple of hours. And I think that sent just a super powerful message of unity. And by the end of the day, I was on cloud nine about it.
So is it fair to say or characterize your concern? I mean, I had this concern. Many people did based on the past of Democratic politics that if Joe Biden stepped down, the party would be in disarray. Democrats in disarray. It would be fragmented. Things would be blowing off. And since that didn't happen, there was this coalescing around Kamala Harris, not to mention, you just mentioned all the endorsements, like record-breaking amounts of money, almost $100 million in 24 hours. Is it fair to say that that was what you were worried about, the disarray?
Yes, and it's got a lot to do with what happened to Joe Biden, right? We had all of these top Dem donors who seemed to be pulling their money away and wanted like an open or contested primary. Right. Or weren't immediately asking for Kamala Harris. I was worried about those voices and that influence kind of fracturing us. But what happened is the opposite. I still don't know what a lot of those Dem donors and rich white guys are going to do, but the rest of us all cut checks and had a historic fundraising, I think biggest fundraising 24-hour period in the history of Act Blue. So
I don't know how much data has come out and how much has been accurate, but you always have your finger on the pulse of people and things and stuff and politics. And I wonder where you're seeing or feeling the energy. I mean, I just tweeted last night that my 80-year-old white Italian dad is all in for Kamala Harris. You know, I usually get like 3 likes and a retweet. I'm not you. And for some reason, people really like that. What that means to me is that people see that if old white men are anybody, hearing that is good. But more what I'm seeing is my young white daughter, 19. She's excited. So young white people, young women, black folks, obviously, seemingly, like thousands of black people, women, I think, were on a Zoom call yesterday. And I mentioned my dad. So what are you seeing, feeling, or hearing in terms of those different constituencies and what you thought they might or are feeling about Kamala Harris for president?
I'm seeing and feeling the same thing. TikTok is exploding right now.
That
Gen
means
Z
young, yeah.
Is very, very fired up about this. And then also all of my friends in the LGBTQ plus community who were just really kind of like really scared about this election are not so scared anymore. And my phone blew up with folks who were excited to vote for Kamala Harris. And so I am seeing just a huge, massive positive response to her for as a candidate, and the fact that she could probably secure enough pledged delegates to clinch the nomination before the end of the week, maybe even by Wednesday night, is astounding.
What legal questions do you have about ballot access or about maybe certain Republican challenges? And then obviously whatever bizarre shit they do, it ended up with our cartoon villain mullahs on the Supreme Court. Do you have any legal concerns about ballot access or challenges from Republicans in terms of this change?
Well, Mark Elias, who has won 99% of his lawsuits against Republicans, says that there are no viable legal challenges to ballot access. And my constitutional law friends said that there's no legal basis in the law for him stepping down and giving delegates over to, or having delegates switch over to Kamala Harris, because there's nothing in the Constitution about primaries. The parties make their own rules for their primaries. But I used to be confident in saying that there's no way the Supreme Court would do that, and I don't have that confidence anymore. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But they would do the same thing to any Democratic candidate. They would pose legal challenges.
Right.
To the Supreme Court.
Okay, so what other concerns do you have right now with Kamala Harris on the top of the ticket? Do you see real vulnerabilities versus fake vulnerabilities? Do you, like me, think they're already going too far with their racism and sexism and that they don't understand how bad that is and how much it backfires?
If they want to do that, if they want to run that race, let them. They are the most anti-woman, most racist ticket in my lifetime. Just openly racist and women hating. They want to, like, JD Vance wants to have national database of women's menstrual cycles. Like go ahead. If you want to play the race game, or you want to play the misogyny game, go ahead. Show everybody who you are, because we already know. But I think the rest of America is about to find out.
One thing I'm hearing a lot of people say is that the Trump campaign was not ready for this, and their reaction has been flat-footed. Do you agree with that? I haven't really paid attention much to their reaction, but that's what a lot of people are saying. That
a lot of people are strongly saying, yeah, yeah, he's furious, and because he's been running this campaign against Joe Biden, and it dawned on me yesterday afternoon. All of the fake Russian AI bot farms that he set up to go after Biden are useless now. They have to reprogram all their Russian AI bot farms and trolls, and they'll have to come up with a message. Right now, all they have is that she laughs too much. So they'll start with the birtherism, and they'll start with the racism, and misogyny has already kicked in a little bit here and there. But yeah, they're completely taken off guard, which I think is the best 1-2 punch Joe Biden could have handed this ticket, the Republican ticket.
Do you want to speculate? Are you allowing yourself? Did you on Daily Beans spend a minute or two on VP the ideas and thoughts and choices? And
haven't yet.
Okay.
I was waiting to see who was going to throw their hat in the ring. We still don't really know. I have two favorites.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
For several reasons. I like Captain Kelly, and I like Josh Shapiro. Good. Josh Shapiro, incredible governor, a swing state. Pennsylvania gets 19 electoral votes. And then Arizona, is also a swing state, an important swing state. Both are important swing states that we need to win. And, Mark Kelly is just a hero. And he's married to Gabby Giffords. We would have a very strong gun violence.
Mark Kelly's thing is he can just be like, hey, I'm a combat pilot who commanded the fucking space shuttle twice. What did you do? But here's the two things I have with them. Mark Kelly, I thought he was a good choice too, even though he's a little too moderate, whatever, this is about. And I don't know how much these choices matter. And real quick, we shouldn't be speculating about it for more than a minute. But somebody said we need that Senate seat. And if he walks away from it, the Democratic governor, Katie Hobbs, could appoint, but then it would be a hard seat to keep. And we need the Senate as much as we need the White House. I don't know what concerns you have about that. And then with Josh Shapiro, I think he's Jewish. And so is Kamala Harris's husband. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I love it. But that's just me. Katie Hobbs by law has to appoint a Democrat to fulfill the rest of Mark Kelly's term. It would be until 2026 when he would be up for re-election again. So that is a consideration. An incumbent senator probably has a better chance of holding a Senate seat in Arizona than a new Senate candidate, but they have until 2026 to figure that out.
Best thing we can do, best thing you're telling your followers, fans, listeners to do right now.
Donate $1, $5, $20, $250, whatever you can to Kamala Harris. I've donated 5 times now in the last 24 hours. I like to max myself out over, multiple donations. And I think that just the fact that she's almost doubled the Biden war chest that she inherited is truly an incredible feat, really. And I think that's the best thing we can do right now without, besides just voting or, when we start text bank and we start door knocking, we start writing postcards. But right now, showing, I think, financial support for Kamala Harris is probably the strongest way we can show our support, show that we are behind her 100%.
Is there any celebrity who you're waiting to hear from before you decide to go further with any of this?
No, I don't need to hear from
You're anything. Not hinged on George Clooney says at this point? You're waiting for Clooney to weigh in, I think.
No, Rob Reiner's weighed in. He's for Kamala, so that's good. Because he didn't say, or he said a couple of tweets down a few times when I was very disappointed in his
what about holding out for Mitt Romney? I think that was suggested by an idiot.
Yeah, no.
Think that's a good idea.
No, and no Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin, after you, I've got Joe Manchin's supporter joining me.
Oh, really? That'll be interesting. I think today said he wasn't going to try to be her vice presidential pick. And I was like, yeah. And boy, I'm not going to compete in the Olympics this year. I won't be taking any questions at this time. Like,
Dan Savage said he is no longer going to be competing in the cunnilingus competition. Dan Savage, of course, the most famous gay man in America, in my opinion, one of. If you don't know him, you're missing out. And if you don't know Allison Gill, you're really missing out. Oh, it was awesome that you joined me on short notice. I really appreciate it. I really wanted to talk to you and get your thoughts on it. I'm excited for your enthusiasm and moved by it. And I will continue to follow you and talk to you. I appreciate you.
And thanks for having me on. I'll continue to follow you and listen to what you have to say.
You are very kind. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, Allison Gill, Dr. Allison Gill, Dr. Jason Johnson, Dr. Christina Greer, and non-Dr. David Rothkopf. Thank you all for joining me on the Kamala Harris for President Extravaganza Palooza special. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you at tonight's Hangout at 9 p.m. East for 1 hour, 9 to 10, to celebrate, to get inspired, to get organized with the stand-up community. I'm looking forward to that. Let's have a drink. Let's toast to President Harris, hopefully. And I will see you there. Thank you very much for listening today. And this will serve as the Tuesday show, I'm sure, as well, as I get on the road and head back home, where I'll talk to you from tonight. You gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye.
stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanting. Try rise up. Show obedience to the voice inside and listen well.